Sick and tired of your love-hate relationship with wine?
Welcome to the Feel It Alcohol Free podcast. Hi, I'm Coach Ruby Williams.
And I'm Coach Susan Larkin.
We're two former wine lovers turned alcohol freedom coaches, exposing the lies about alcohol
and giving you, our listeners, the tools to break free so you can feel lit.
And when you're lit, you'll feel healthier, freer, and more in control of your life.
So relax, kick back, and get ready to feel lit alcohol-free.
And don't forget, grab a copy of our wine-free weekend guide after the show. Hello, it's so great to be back with you guys. And the question today is near and dear to my heart, and I can really relate. So if I can't stop drinking on my own, does that mean I'm an alcoholic? It's such a good question because of that term. So yeah, what do you think, Susan?
Oh, yes. This is a biggie for me because that term alcoholic was something that was really keeping me stuck because I didn't want to be an alcoholic. When I talk about, I was worried that I had a problem and I didn't want to have a problem. That was the problem that I was worried I had. And that's why I kept working so hard to get back to being a normal drinker. And that just kept me stuck for so long. And when I learned the science around how alcohol affects our brain and body, that just set me free. And so the truth is that the term alcoholic is not even a scientific term. It's alcohol use disorder. And honestly, in some communities or using the word alcoholic is sometimes considered offensive, actually. It's not a scientific term. It's so labeling to the person, whereas alcohol is an addictive substance. And so it's a substance problem, not a person problem. We don't call ourselves tobaccoholics or chocolateaholics or caffeineaholics or,
right.
And so it's such a label, and it's like about the person, that there's something wrong with the person. And that's what was keeping me really stuck. And so when I learned about the science about, again, how alcohol affects your brain and body, that there's something called neuroplasticity that you can change, your brain can change, that just gave me so much hope. And learning that it was on a spectrum, it allowed me to kind of place myself and say, okay, I'm here in this spectrum of a disorder or disordered drinking. And what am I going to do about it? Then I could take responsibility for it. When it was just this nebulous, there's something wrong with me, I have a problem, I have experience going to AA where I had to call myself an alcoholic in meetings, and I would literally just choke on it like I'm it just wouldn't come out of my mouth because I didn't believe it either. I didn't believe I had a disease. That is a loaded term, and if it's keeping you stuck, you can just swipe it away because it's not, again, even a technical term for alcohol use disorder. That's what it's called. So yeah, how about you, Ruby?
Well, similar. I was just nodding my head and saying, I totally relate. For me, growing up and just living in the world, it seems like there was just it was like black or white. You're either a normal drinker or you're an alcoholic. And then you have some major problem. And I never felt like I had until the very end, major problem. I was still working and functioning, and so it's that term. I didn't want to have to say that. I also went to AA, like you said, and it was, it was so hard for me. Hi, I'm Ruby. I'm an alcoholic. And it just didn't feel right.
Right.
I knew deep in my heart that it was not this, the big book was not scientifically proven. It was it felt more religious and I don't know. I really, really resonate with the science. When I hear about the science and how it affects the brain and the body, it just felt more accessible for me. And so in fact, I would love to talk about, dopamine. I mean, think dopamine was one of this really, if you haven't talked about dopamine yet. So dopamine, it's neurotransmitter. And neuro is the brain, and a transmitter is like how it's moved in the brain, like the information is moving around your brain. And alcohol, it creates like this huge artificial high in dopamine. And if we go back to say, like caveman days, let's just our basic brain function, dopamine actually is a survival neurotransmitter. We need it. So in the example I love is like, say you're looking for raspberries because that's something you like, back in caveman days, it was sweet and delicious. And your dopamine would naturally spike for those things that you need for survival. So your brain is working the way it should, meaning but alcohol is so much artificially higher levels. Yeah. So think about like video games or shopping or sugar. All of these things are raising your dopamine up and artificially. But your brain is, I guess what I want to know is your brain is normal. Your brain is doing the right thing. It's not your fault. If you start to drink more alcohol, it's because it starts to almost equate it with survival. You need alcohol to drink. At least that's where I got to. And so, like what you were saying before, it's really important to not blame yourself. And that's what the alcoholic label does. It's like blaming you. But it's really, like you said, it's a substance, alcohol use disorder spectrum. Yeah. So
yeah. Well, what I loved is when I learned about the dopamine, all this was new to me, and all this idea of like, then also our brain likes to conserve energy. So it wants to do the same things over and over again. And so so the dopamine hits your artificial pleasure center, but the dopamine actual chemical is the learning chemical. So your brain learns, oh, this is good. So like in raspberries, it learns, oh, this is good. They taste good and they help me stay alive because we need food. But then the dopamine is so artificially high, as you mentioned, in alcohol, but especially when we use it to cope as a coping mechanism. If you're upset about something and it kind of numbs or dulls those feelings, then our brain is like, it gets the dopamine hit and it goes, oh, anytime we're upset, we drink. And so that's when we talked about all the jobs that you've given alcohol. So every time you give alcohol a job, you get that dopamine hit, and then your brain relates that thing, that job that you gave alcohol to needing alcohol for that job. That's what we've taught it. Like when I learned that, I'm like, oh, I taught my brain this I didn't mean to, but my brain learned this. And then learning about neuroplasticity, that our brains can change. I'm like, well, then my brain can unlearn this behavior. And that just gave me so much hope, because I'm like, okay, yes. So it's like we have these, I used to use this like, hand gesture where it's like I have these old grooves that I've created on all these jobs that I've given alcohol, and I'm going to do new things to create new grooves, sort of like an old road that's like a rut. And so, when you feel yourself like, I know I felt this way, and I hear clients talk about it all the time. It's like I just all of a sudden automatically, there's a bottle in my hand and I'm pouring a glass and I'm drinking it. It's just like I get on this moving, like I get into this, like when you're driving and your car goes into a rut on a muddy road, and then you're just in that groove. Or you could also liken it to like an Autobahn, where it's such a smooth highway, like you smooth this highway and you can go 100 miles per hour really easily. But then the new neural pathways, all of the new habits you're creating is like this old bumpy road. And so it's kind of awkward and bumpy and you can't go really fast. But as we continue to go down the new behavior that we want to practice, we're creating new neural pathways, and that's going to be our new highway as long as we continue to grow that and we weaken the other. And I love that visual for me. It made me, it helped me with my decision making, because I would think, oh, which neural pathway do I want to feed? Do I want to feed and strengthen the old one, or do I want to feed and strengthen the new one with new behaviors, new thoughts? Trying out, experimenting, and not drinking, because drinking always reinforces the old neural pathways. And I wanted to weaken those. And so it gave me kind of just something I could hold on to and grab onto, instead of just this sort of, there's something wrong with me and now I can never drink again. It was sort of like, no, I don't want to drink. And I know there's a way and there's hope that I can start to strengthen these new neural pathways and become completely free from that old rut and that old highway. So for me, it was huge. It was a huge, huge game changer learning the science. I loved it so much. And I just couldn't get enough of it. I was just like reading everything I could get my hands on.
Yeah. And the brain is not set in stone, you guys. The brain changes, it grows, it morphs these pathways. You weaken the old pathways and you strengthen new ones. And your brain, there is so much hope that your body can heal, your brain can heal and change, and your emotions can heal. And the journey through this, though, is I call it like you go from asleep to aware to awake to alive. So the 4 A's. And so I think of like a butterfly, and how a butterfly, is in a cocoon and just asleep, and then you're aware, and it's like when you get aware, you start to notice, maybe I do have a problem. You're starting to ask yourself some questions like, do I feel better when I'm drinking? Am I living up to my full potential? These kinds of questions. And then when you're awake to the actual, like, I want to change, it can feel awkward. Like you were mentioning before, there is some discomfort in making a change. And I liken it to a butterfly walking, right? Like a butterfly, when it first comes out, it has to walk, and it's uncomfortable, and it's awkward, and it looks funny at first. And then it flies, though. And that's the like alive part. The living alive, making alcohol small and irrelevant, living that life that you don't want to escape from anymore. So, yeah.
And I so wanted that. That was really what I wanted, the alive. I think I mentioned that before, but that never just makes my heart feel good. Like that's what I wanted, and that's what I got from alcohol-free living. And that's why I'm here on this podcast. That's why I'm a coach, is because I want that for people. So yeah, when you're aware, aware sucks. I wasn't aware for a really long time. And then you get to awake, where it's tricky because you have a few skills, you're trying out, you're experimenting these new skills, but you're not really skilled at it yet. And those neural pathways haven't changed. You're in the process. I call it the messy middle. You're in the messy middle of the process. And what I think happens is if you have what we call a data point, if you do drink, because it's still a process, right? It's not perfected yet. And like you said, it's a little butterfly that's, walking awkwardly, not flying yet, so you're not flying yet. And that's okay. You want to continue the work to keep strengthening the new neural pathways. And the shame and blame that at least I encountered if you drank in AA, and I don't mean to bash AA because I know it's really helpful for some people, but just that idea of failure, right? It just made my shame and blame even worse and made me not want to even keep trying. I just wanted to give up, and when you have a different perspective of, oh, this is a process, I'm strengthening this one, I'm weakening this one, but it's not quite done yet, then it's just sort of like, no, pick yourself up and keep moving forward. Keep walking on your little wobbly legs like a little wobbly butterfly, right?
Right.
You're going to get to fly eventually.
And it really does help to have a coach by your side and a community and support, because connection is so important, right, Susan?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, when they say the opposite of addiction is connection, I'm even like really using the word addiction, but again, it's just a word. And if you use it in the term of like, oh, I'm addicted to caffeine, I have to have coffee every morning, that's fine. But the minute you use the word addiction and alcohol, it's like, ooh, you know what I mean? It's like the A word, you know what I mean? And I had a client who who was telling me this story, which I thought was amazing because she's making really good progress, and she was running. Running has been a really great outlet for her, and she was running, and she said she just had this vision of her ripping the A word off the front of her, like it
Ooh.
was on her, like the scarlet letter, ripping it off and throwing it away, and just like, yeah. And I thought that was just an amazing visual for her of like continuing to get free, right? And even being free of the stigma of the word alcoholic, or the stigma from the word addiction around alcohol. But connection, needing help, this is not easy. It's an addictive substance. It's not easy. Having support and having like-minded people who relate to your story, people who have information that they can share, like these, the information we're sharing in our podcast, getting a coach, like you mentioned, Ruby. And we also we have a little community on Facebook called the Feel Lit Podcast and group. It's a group that you could join, where you can ask us questions and be around other like-minded people who are also on an alcohol-free journey.
Yeah, we'd love for you to join
there. Yes.
Yeah. So I would love for you to join our Facebook group. That would be so fun. Exactly. And it's free, and just join. Well, we always
why not?
end our podcast with a question. So I'm going to ask Susan this question today. So Susan, what are you doing to feel lit?
Well, what I thought I would share today is, just is a basic in, our nutrition, which is just hydration, but I have a story about it. So I learned about hyperhydration, which is a way to deal with anxiety or anxiousness, or even drinking urges, because I love the story behind this, because like if you were like, say, when our mind gets anxious, it falls into this survival mode, and it's like you're being chased by a saber-toothed tiger. So if you were being chased by a saber-toothed tiger, if you stopped to drink some water, you would get eaten, right? So you wouldn't stop it. So stopping, pausing to drink water is a way to trick your brain, or to show your brain you're not in danger if you're in this sort of fight or flight mode. And I have a really funny story, or not funny, but so this was, at least close to a year in my alcohol-free journey. I'd been alcohol-free that whole time. We were on our way to a concert. It was Elton John in Brooklyn. And we were also packing for a trip. I can't remember where we were going, but anyway, we were going to fly out of New York. So we were packing, and just a lot of, I think it was the first trip too after COVID. And so there was just a lot of old stuff that comes up. Like, I always get anxious when I'm traveling. I get anxious when I'm packing. And so by the time we got into the car, and then we were running late, and then we hit traffic, and I just like, my anxiety was like through the roof. I was just in bad shape, and I was grumpy and anxious. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to try this. I'm going to try this thing. We had tons of water in the car, and I'm like, we stopped at a rest stop for some reason. My husband went in, and I'm like, I'm going to pound this water. I'm just going to drink it as fast as, so that's the technique. Just drink this water as fast as you can. And afterwards I was like, I do feel better. Oh my gosh. Just like that hyperhydration, hydrates your brain, and it kicks you out of that fight or flight of the anxiousness. And so I was like, wow, this thing does work. Cause at first I was like, oh, that's weird, hyperhydration. Okay. But it did work. And so I have used it. I'm super tired or anxious about something at work, I will just suck down a whole bunch of water, and it's, as long as you have water available to you. I mean, breathing is also another good way to deal with anxiety, but I love the hydration, this hyperhydration, and just staying hydrated in general. Like, I mean, alcohol is such dehydrating substance that just like getting more hydration into your body in early days of becoming alcohol free, or just in your life in general. Like, now my body just wants hydration. I can totally feel when like I haven't drank enough water.
Yeah. So I have a story too. When I felt very kind of sad, or like I was feeling really low, I thought of that too, where it's like taking a full glass of water, like 8 or 12 ounces, and downing it all at once. It's not the sipping a little bit all day long. It's all at once. You have one big full glass of water. And it's true. It
Pound
just
it.
changed. I felt I was like literally in tears, but I tried this and it works. So I'd love for you all to try it.
It really does.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's so easy and available. Like I think some of these things that can help when we are hijacked. I always use I like to use the word hijacked versus triggered. And it's not that you can't have your feelings of being sad, but if you feel like it's starting to take over and then you start to have the urge to drink or you start having thoughts about drinking, like you want to click out of that because you're in like the survival mode and your little voice is starting to go, oh, it would help you feel better. It would help relax you. Your trusty old tool over here, And so having a different tool to use is key, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Switches.
Yeah, we're going to be sharing lots of different tools
right there
too. Yeah.
Yes. So this is a really good tool. Keep some water bottles handy, or just grab but like Ruby said, you got to chug it. So sometimes then I even crack myself up because I'm like, chug, chug, chug,
chug, chug.
When I'm drinking my water, chug, chug, chug. Like, how fast can I down this water? And it's like pouring out of my mouth. So and that helps too. Just laughing is good. It
is good. Oh, this is so fun to do this podcast with you, Coach Susan. Yay.
I know. I love every single time we sit down together and share things that really helped us, because I hung on every word of so many podcasts, so many books, so many of the coaches that I had in my life. Anybody who'd gone before me, I'm like, what did you do? I wanted all the information. And, but the trick is that not everything's going to work for you that worked for us, but it's just to keep trying and experimenting with things too. I used to beat myself up. I mean, I still work on beating myself up, to be honest with you. I am really still working on it. But I used to beat myself up if I tried something and it didn't work and I just was like, meh or something. And then I would think there's something wrong with me. That's my initial reaction, is there's something wrong with me. So I just want to say that, because if you're like me, a perfectionist, or, you're just hanging on everything, it's like you have to experiment and make it your own. That is the thing. Like, try this, try that, and then make your own toolbox of the things that work for you. And I mean, I would love to keep sharing these ideas in our Facebook group. And there's some of our friends that are alcohol free are in there. And so you're going to get not only our perspective, but just a great gang of us that all are living this alcohol free lifestyle, who are lit and excited about being lit, and everybody can share. You can share your ideas. Listeners can share their ideas, and we can bring them on the podcast. So that's another great place to share. So we will put the link in the show notes, so you can just click and join if you're
join our Feel Lit Facebook community. Yeah. All right.
Woohoo. And tell us how you feel lit. Yay.
Well, thank you for listening. All right. See you next time.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for listening to Feel Lit Alcohol Free Podcast. Do you have a question you'd like us to answer on the show?
All you need to do is head over to Apple Podcasts and do two simple things. Leave a rating and review telling us what you think of the show. And in that review, ask us any questions you have about breaking free from wine or living an alcohol-free lifestyle.
That's it. Then tune in to hear your question answered live. Don't forget to grab your copy of A Wine-Free Weekend at www.feelitpodcasts.com.
And remember, do something today that will help you feel lit.
See you next time.